Hello and welcome to another episode of Digital Pulse. You sent over some fascinating research on mental health and immunology and societal trends. We're going deep into a book called 3 Decades of National Serotonization of Bugs, Drugs, and COVID Gulags.
Now, before we dive into the specifics, I should probably say up front that this book, it's controversial.
Okay.
The author, Dr. Adonis Sfera, is known for his unconventional views, but I think that's what makes this deep dive so interesting. He's really pushing us to think differently about mental illness.
Yeah, absolutely. He's really challenging that traditional, chemical imbalance model of mental illness, suggesting that we've become way too reliant on medication that targets serotonin. And he points out some pretty startling downsides to that.
Right, like the study that he cites about long-term antipsychotic use and its link to a decrease in gray matter. Essentially, the study found that long-term use of these medications could contribute to a thinning of the brain's cortex and even impacting those tiny energy factories in our cells, the mitochondria.
So it's like a trade-off. Relief from symptoms in the short term, but then potential long-term consequences for the brain. That's definitely something to think about.
It is, and it leads to this core question Dr. Sfera is raising, is our current approach to mental health, is it too focused on medication and neurotransmitters? Are we overlooking other crucial factors?
Okay, I see where this is going. So he's advocating for a more holistic perspective, right?
Right.
One that considers the gut-brain connection, environmental toxins, even societal influences.
Exactly. He argues that instead of just managing symptoms, we need to understand and address the root causes of mental illness.
And one of the key areas he focuses on is the gut-brain connection. I've heard about this, but can you explain what that actually means?
So think of it this way. Your gut is like a second brain.
Okay.
It's teeming with trillions of bacteria, and they play this crucial role in your overall health, including your mental well-being.
So what's the connection between what's happening in my gut and what's happening in my brain?
Well, these gut microbes actually produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine, which directly influence your mood, your sleep, and even cognitive function.
Wait, so you're telling me that what I eat could actually be affecting my mood? That's mind-blowing.
It is. And Dr. Sfera goes even deeper. He introduces this concept of the aryl hydrocarbon receptor, or AHR.
Okay.
It's basically a tiny sensor in your gut that's constantly scanning your environment. If it detects something harmful, like pollution or even certain medications, it can trigger this chain reaction that ultimately affects your mental health.
Wow. It's our gut is this intricate communication hub sending signals to the brain that can influence everything from our emotions to our behavior.
And this communication can go both ways. Stress and anxiety can impact your gut health. And conversely, imbalance in your gut bacteria can contribute to mental health challenges.
So it's this complex feedback loop. Our gut and brain are constantly influencing each other. And Dr. Sfera is suggesting that we might be able to address mental health issues by focusing on improving gut health.
Exactly. He suggests that addressing gut health through diet, like lifestyle changes or targeted therapies, might be a more effective long-term strategy for treating mental illness.
It's like treating the root cause instead of just putting a Band-Aid on the symptoms. I like that approach. But speaking of root causes, can we talk about this cholesterol and aggression link? That seems totally counterintuitive.
Right. Most people associate high cholesterol with heart problems, not aggression.
Yeah.
But Dr. Sfera presents evidence suggesting that lower cholesterol levels might actually be associated with increased aggression, especially in individuals with schizophrenia.
So how does that even work? What does cholesterol have to do with behavior?
Well, it seems to be linked to the serotonin transporter, or SERT. This is the protein that many antidepressants target to increase serotonin levels in the brain. But here's the thing. SERT actually has a cholesterol binding site, and cholesterol seems to play a role in its function.
So if someone has low cholesterol, could that disrupt SERT function and mess with serotonin signaling?
That's what Dr. Sfera suggests. And it's supported by studies that have found a correlation between low cholesterol and aggression. He even suggests that statins, which are commonly prescribed to lower cholesterol, might inadvertently contribute to aggressive behavior in some individuals.
Wow, so it's like this domino effect.
Yeah.
Low cholesterol, SERT dysfunction, serotonin problems, increased aggression.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind-boggling how everything is connected.
It is, and it makes you wonder, are we sometimes creating problems by trying to solve others? Dr. Sfera isn't saying cholesterol is the sole cause of aggression, but he's raising this important point about the potential unintended consequences of medication.
Definitely something to consider, especially given how widely statins are prescribed.
Absolutely. And it leads to another fascinating concept Dr. Sfera explores, von Economo neurons, or VNs.
VNs, huh? Tell me more about those.
They're specialized brain cells. And Dr. Sfera describes them as being involved in higher order social and emotional processing, like empathy and moral decision making. He even suggests that dysfunction in veins might contribute to conditions like psychopathy.
Wow. So these tiny cells could hold the key to understanding some of the most complex aspects of human behavior.
That's a possibility, and it's an area of research that's gaining more attention. And get this, Dr. Sfera suggests that serotonin plays a role in VN function.
Hold on. Are you saying that medications that affect serotonin, like SSRIs, could be influencing our VNs and therefore our moral compass?
It's a provocative question, right? And it ties back to his overall argument about the serotonization of society. He's not saying SSRIs are inherently bad, but he's urging us to consider their broader impact on individuals in society as a whole.
That's a lot to unpack. It's like he's saying, hey, we've been focusing on this one neurotransmitter, but what about all these other factors that contribute to mental health? What about the gut, the environment, our social interactions?
Exactly. And what about the role of iron? It's an element we typically associate with red blood cells, but it has this surprising impact on the brain.
Okay, now I'm really curious. I know iron is important for oxygen transport, but how does it affect the brain?
Well, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Iron is essential for various brain functions, including neurotransmitter synthesis. But too much iron in the brain can be toxic, contributing to inflammation and damage that ultimately leads to the loss of gray matter.
So it's about finding that right balance, just like with cholesterol. Too little is bad, too much is bad. The Goldilocks principle strikes again.
Exactly. And this iron overload, it can be exacerbated by various factors, including aging, certain genetic predispositions, and even infections. Dr. Sfera suggests that the inflammation and damage caused by excess iron can disrupt brain function, contributing to conditions like depression and schizophrenia.
So how do we prevent this iron overload?
Dr. Sfera highlights a fascinating protein called lactoferrin. It's actually found in breast milk, as well as other bodily fluids like tears and saliva. And it has this ability to bind to iron and help regulate its levels in the body.
So potentially, boosting lactoferrin could be a way to protect the brain from iron overload and its negative consequences.
That's one of the avenues of research Dr. Sfera suggests. He believes that understanding the role of iron in the brain could open up new possibilities for preventing and treating mental illness. It really ties into his whole thesis that we need to move beyond a purely pharmaceutical approach to mental health.
This is incredible. Okay, I'm ready to dive into the next topic. What's up with these brain oscillations?
Yes. This is where we get into the realm of brainwaves. Specifically, Dr. Sfera focuses on gamma oscillations. They're like the brain's high-speed internet connection. They're the fastest of the brain rhythms, and they're thought to be crucial for higher-level functions like consciousness, memory, and attention.
So if these gamma oscillations are disrupted, it's like having a faulty internet connection. Our brains can't communicate effectively.
That's a great analogy. And just like a faulty internet connection can, disrupt your online experience, disruptions in gamma oscillations can impact cognitive and emotional processes. Dr. Sfera points out that these disruptions are often observed in conditions like schizophrenia and depression.
So these disruptions could explain some of the cognitive and emotional difficulties people with these conditions experience.
Exactly. It's like their brains aren't communicating efficiently.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what can we do about these disruptions? Is there any way to influence brainwave activity?
Now, this is where things get really interesting. Dr. Sfera discusses the concept of brain synchronization and suggests that certain therapies might be able to influence, brainwave patterns.
Brain synchronization. Sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It does, doesn't it? But it's a real area of research. He mentions therapies like whole-body vibration and photobiomodulation as potential ways to promote brainwave synchronization. Whole-body vibration involves, exposing the body to specific vibrations, often through a platform you stand on. And photobiomodulation involves using light, often near-infrared light, to stimulate cellular processes.
We're talking about literally, shaking up the brain and shining light on it to improve its function. This is getting more sci-fi by the minute.
I know, it's pretty mind-blowing, but these are legitimate therapeutic approaches that are being studied for their potential to, influence brainwave activity and improve cognitive function.
This is incredible. Okay, my brain is officially buzzing with all this new information. What's next on our deep dive agenda?
Let's shift our focus to the powerhouses of our cells. Mitochondria. Remember those tiny energy factories we talked about earlier? Dr. Sfera emphasizes their critical role in mental health.
Okay, I remember learning about mitochondria in high school biology. They're responsible for producing energy in the form of ATP, which is essential for all cellular processes, including the complex workings of the brain. But how do they connect to mental health?
Well, when mitochondria aren't functioning properly, it can lead to, energy depletion in brain cells, contributing to a whole host of mental health challenges. Think of it like the brain's power grid is experiencing a blackout.
Got it. So if our mitochondria are struggling, our brains are struggling, makes sense. But what causes these mitochondrial malfunctions in the first place?
There are a number of factors that can contribute to it. Dr. Sfera mentions things like genetic predispositions, exposure to environmental toxins, chronic stress, and even poor diet. It's a complex interplay of nature and nurture.
It seems like everything we've talked about so far, the gut-brain connection, iron overload, even disrupted brain oscillations, could potentially impact mitochondrial function. It's all interconnected.
You're catching on. Dr. Sfera really emphasizes the interconnectedness of these systems and how they all contribute to mental well-being.
So is there any way to help our mitochondria get back on track?
That's where things get really exciting. Dr. Sfera discusses some cutting-edge research on mitochondrial transfer and transplantation.
Hold on, mitochondrial transplantation. Are we talking about transplanting mitochondria from one cell to another?
You got it. It's a relatively new field of research, but it holds immense potential for treating a wide range of conditions, including those affecting the brain.
So theoretically, if we can replace damaged mitochondria with healthy ones, we could potentially reverse or prevent the negative consequences of mitochondrial dysfunction.
That's the hope, and there's already some promising evidence to support this. Studies have shown that mitochondrial transplantation can, improve cellular function and even extend lifespan in animal models.
Wow, that's incredible. It feels like we're on the verge of a major breakthrough in how we understand and treat mental illness.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following this research, and Dr. Sfera's book provides a comprehensive overview of these emerging possibilities.
Okay, I'm officially mind blown.
Yeah.
Let's take a moment to process all of this, and then we'll explore Dr. Sfera's perspective on the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on mental health.
So are we ready to unpack Dr. Sfera's take on COVID and mental health?
Yeah, definitely. It feels like COVID really messed things up for a lot of people mentally.
Yeah.
What are some of his key takeaways?
Well, he highlights a lot of the things that, we all kind of experience, that social isolation, the fear, the uncertainty, and that constant, barrage of negative news. He says that all really contributed to this, huge spike in mental health challenges.
Yeah, it's like the pandemic just ripped the Band-Aid off and exposed how vulnerable, our mental health systems are.
Exactly. But he also dives into the, potential biological effects of the virus itself on mental health. There's growing evidence that the virus can trigger inflammation in the brain and even disrupt the blood-brain barrier, which is so important.
So even if you had a mild case of COVID, it could still have these long-term effects on your brain and mess with your mental well-being.
It's a possibility. It definitely needs more research, but he's really raising the flag there. He also ties the pandemic to some of the concepts that we've already talked about, like cellular senescence and immune dysregulation.
It's all connected, right? COVID, inflammation, cellular senescence, immune problems, and then boom, mental health challenges emerge. It's like this crazy web of interactions.
Exactly. And that's one of the major takeaways from Dr. Sfera's work. He argues that we just way oversimplify mental illness when we're looking for the single cause. Instead, we need to consider this interconnectedness of biological, psychological, environmental, and even societal factors.
Okay, so after this deep dives into Dr. Sfera's book, where do we go from here? What can we do with all this information?
Well, his main suggestion is that we need to move beyond the limitations of that traditional, chemical imbalance model of mental illness. Instead of solely focusing on tweaking, neurotransmitter levels, he suggests that we focus on addressing the root causes of mental health challenges.
So it's almost a call to action. Pushing for lifestyle changes, diet modifications, and even therapies that support gut health or influence brain activity directly.
Right. He even mentions the potential for mitochondrial transfer and transplantation, which is crazy. It sounds like science fiction, but it could become a reality.
This whole deep dive has been a lot to think about, that's for sure. What are you going to explore further? What really stood out to you?
Honestly, for me, the gut-brain connection is just fascinating. It's incredible that something as simple as like what we eat can impact our mental state. It makes me want to learn more about how I can optimize my own gut health.
Yeah, I'm with you there. And I'm super intrigued by the idea of brain oscillations and like the possibility of using therapies like vibration or light exposure to like train our brains to synchronize better. That's wild.
It really pushes the boundaries of what we think is possible in like mental health treatment. We're moving beyond like traditional talk therapy and medication. It's like we're entering this realm where we can directly influence brain activity.
I think Dr. Sfera's book has given us like a peek into the future of mental health. There's so much more to discover and understand about the human brain and its connection to our well-being. It's exciting.
It is. And I think the most important message is that even with like super complex challenges like mental illness, there's always hope. Researchers, clinicians, and people all over the world are working towards a brighter future for mental health.
That's a really good point, Donna. We've covered so much ground today, and my brain is full.
Mine too. It's been a fantastic deep dive. It's challenged us to think critically, expanded our knowledge, and hopefully it's empowered us to like take better care of ourselves and others.
Well said. Thanks for joining me on this intellectual adventure.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. Until next time.
And to all of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Digital Pulse. We hope you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did. Remember, there's always more to explore, so stay curious and take care of your mental well-being. So we've covered some like really mind-blowing concepts from Dr. Sfera's book. It's like amazing to think that we might be on the verge of a revolution in how we understand and treat mental illness.
Yeah, absolutely. And it really highlights just how much we still have to learn about the human brain. But amidst all this complexity, Dr. Sfera, he also offers some practical advice for those of us, struggling with mental health challenges.
Okay, I'm all ears. What does he suggest?
Well, he really emphasizes the importance of like a holistic approach to well-being. It's not just about medication or therapy. It's about taking care of all aspects of our lives that contribute to our mental state.
So it's like a more proactive and preventative approach to mental health.
Exactly. He encourages readers to prioritize, things like sleep, exercise, stress management, healthy eating. He also highlights the importance of social connection and spending time in nature.
It's like he's saying, don't wait for a crisis to start taking care of your mental health.
Right. It's about making small, sustainable changes that can make a big difference over time.
That's actually really encouraging. It feels empowering to know that we have some control over our mental well-being.
Absolutely. And, it's not about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about making conscious choices that support our mental health.
This deep dive has been quite a journey, full of twists and turns and unexpected discoveries. What's your biggest takeaway from all of this?
For me, it's the realization that mental health is not just about brain chemistry. It's about the intricate interplay of our biology, our environment, our experiences, and our social connections. We can't separate the mind from the body or the individual from their surroundings.
It's like we're all part of this complex ecosystem, and our mental health is like a reflection of the health of that ecosystem.
Exactly. And that means we need to start thinking about mental health in a more holistic and interconnected way.
I think Dr. Sfera's book has given us a lot to think about and a lot to hope for. I'm feeling inspired to learn more and to just keep exploring these new frontiers in mental health research.
Me too. And I think the most important message is that we're not alone in this journey. There are researchers, clinicians, and individuals all over the world working towards a brighter future for mental health.
That's a comforting thought.
Yeah.
Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thank you so much for guiding us through this fascinating and thought-provoking material.
Oh, it was my pleasure. I always enjoy exploring these complex topics and sharing what I've learned.
And to you, listening, thank you for joining us on this episode of Digital Pulse. We hope you found it as enlightening and inspiring as we did. Remember, there's always more to explore, so stay curious and take care of your mental well-being.